that's so important, and to communicate about this and kind of learn this about yourself, because you're more empathetic for your partner and how they give and receive love, and you have all this love inside you, but if you're not conveying it in a way that they understand or receive, you can kind of be missing the mark.
Hi, honey.
Good morning, honey.
Good morning, honey. You're a little frustrated with my ADD. All over the bing, bing,
Never,
bing, bing, bing,
never.
Bing. He's trying to get me to sit down in his chair and actually have a conversation.
Be a little difficult. I may already be a little worn out before we've even begun.
That's pretty bad if I warn you out before we ever walked into the
okay.
studio here.
It's part of your language, your love language we're going to talk about today.
I'm just trying to build your resiliency.
Oh.
How am I doing?
I don't know. You need to feed me first. I can hang in there a little better with all your thoughts.
I understand. Yeah. So what you want to talk about?
I want to talk a little bit about love languages today.
Love languages. What do you mean?
Dive into the 5 love languages that we all hear about.
What do you mean when you say that?
Why do you have so many questions?
I want to know. I want to know what you mean. That sounds like foreign to me. It doesn't really.
It doesn't, because we know you read the book.
I'm just trying to get you to explain.
So what? This author, Gary Chapman, which I don't even know his background. But did the study of the 5 love languages.
Yep. So, and I think he's written a lot of other probably sequels to the book, like everyone else, like Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh yeah, there's a whole series apparently. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, it was a bestseller. So the book, and I'll just tell everyone out there, if they haven't heard of it or if they haven't read it, a lot of it you can pull up online. But you shouldn't flip me off camera. This is what we do.
Lord, now he's distracted.
No, this is what we do. We banter and have fun. But yeah, so a gentleman by the name of Gary Chapman, I'm not sure if he's a doctor or whatever, it doesn't matter, but he wrote a book back in 1992 called The 5 Love Languages. And
did you read this book in 1992?
I don't think I got it in 92, but I did get it in the early mid-90s. There was a reason why, but
well, what was the reason? You're going to leave us hanging?
Well, I'll get to it, but I actually got it as I was starting to we were having kids, and so I was using it as a parenting tool.
Oh, look at you!
Yeah, kind of prepping ahead of my kids being able to actually have their own personality. But we can talk a little bit.
I
think
when we talk about the 5 love languages, people always think about romantic relationships, but it can also cross over into any relationship you have, like you said, with your kids or your friends and.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So I wrote this book in 1992, and I highly recommend anybody who has any significant relationships in their life, it doesn't have to be romantic, buy the book. It's super cheap, or you could probably get a synopsis, like I said, and Google it, and it's so common now. But the premise was that this individual, through a bunch of studies and surveys, I guess, had taken all of the ways that we relate to each other and kind of distilled it down to like 5 categories. And again, I think we're certainly more complex than that, but it's a good segue into how we show up, right?
So what are the 5?
So the 5 love languages, the 5 big buckets. Let's see if I can name them, because I always seem
I gave this to you.
I know, right? I always seem to forget one, but their main categories are words of affirmation.
Don't look at the whiteboard.
Don't tell them my cheat sheet. Words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, not GIF, but gifts. Receiving gifts, physical touch, and then acts of service.
You got them.
I
nice
cheated.
job.
I looked a little bit and cheated. So the idea is having these conversations because we all typically want to be shown love or appreciation in one of these main buckets, and then we also show or exert or demonstrate our love in one of these 5.
Yeah, inadvertently we kind of give love the way that we want to be shown love. So it's nice to know these, especially if you and your partner are different.
It is, and so that was another. I mean, there's so many reasons to get this, but like we, by default, we show up and, for example, and this isn't necessarily specific to me, but I may like to buy gifts for people, and that may be the way I show somebody
I love
appreciate. I know
accepting
you
gifts
do,
from
right?
people.
Yeah. I don't know too many people that don't. But
Yeah.
if I'm always like buying gifts, and this is the way I'm showing my appreciation and love to people, that's great. But that may not be the way that person who's receiving feels that I'm demonstrating their
Yeah,
love. So
most affirmed.
yeah, so it's great if you do, but it's even better if you have awareness of this and that you can meet the other person where they're at.
And like you said, we all have a little bit of some of them, but if you take this quiz online like you and I did, there's one that stands out as the most, and it kind of breaks it down into percentages.
Yes. I know one of the last talks we had, we talked about personality profiles, right? And we talked about how we're wired. And again, that's all available online for free. And it breaks down whether you're introvert or extrovert, whether you're a feeler or judger. And those are really good. So it's another tool for self-discovery. It's another tool for personal growth. It's another tool to show, help you understand
I think it'd
how
be
you show
really
up.
good too for a new couple or a young couple to kind of learn these things. I mean, I didn't learn what mine was till probably
3 minutes ago.
really only like 3 years ago, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I just never dove into that kind of stuff.
Where did you first learn about it?
Let's see. You know what? What are you grinning about over there?
I was getting ready to say thank you because you were going to say me.
Oh my gosh. No, I wasn't going to say you. Actually, I was going to give myself the credit because remember I got that book for one of our anniversaries and it was different little activities to do, the challenge book, like relationship challenge book.
Yep.
And one of them was to do this quiz online and sit down and have a discussion about your love language because I'd heard of it, but I'd never read the book or never dove into seeing what my love language was. But if you just listed all those, I think I was right on, wasn't I, when I said mine's probably physical touch, just because I love a good foot rub every day.
Tell us more about your need for physical touch. I think the world wants to know.
And what does that mean? Are you trying to be saucy? It's really pretty simple. Rub my feet and I'm a happy girl.
I know, right?
No, but I mean, it definitely goes beyond that.
No,
but
just
you want to talk a little bit about what our results came out as? We brought them today.
Yep. So you're talking about when the book came out, and again, the reason why I got it because I wanted to say is we didn't have any of these conversations or training or anything in my household growing up. You know, and most people don't. They're just kind of left to figure it out, and you just default, and then you wonder, and then people wonder why. We all wonder why we're not connecting, you know, and why we don't understand each other and this and that. So this isn't the end all be all, but again, it's a good tool. So this was instrumental for me in certainly early on in the years of my marriage. I think when my first child came along, I've been married 6 years, but it really set the foundation for my kids as they begin to grow, and it was already like front of mind. And as they developed and as they started to express themselves, it doesn't take long to begin to see which of these emerge. And sometimes there's I'm trying to give a little backstory. So there's and they're not hard and fast. So it's not like you have one and not the other. There's obviously a combination of them. However, typically one of the five usually always takes the lead, and it's like it demonstrates itself more strongly, I guess, than the others. But it's not to say that you don't have a combination of all these. So to your point, we sat down and took this survey quiz.
Yeah, I don't remember how long it was, but
it's not very long.
Yeah,
it's not, I think
easy to
maybe. Yeah, we haven't looked online, but I think you can take the test online. I can't.
You can.
I can't believe it would take you longer than 15 minutes. Right? It's a series of multiple choice questions that you're supposed to ask yourself or ask you, and you're supposed to answer not how you wish you were, but just to be honest in how you are. That's who you get the most accurate reading because it's an algorithm of all of the thousands and thousands of surveys that data have taken from other people. Yeah. So that's real important when you take it, is to just be honest and just see what comes out of it. And that's when you get the most accurate results. So for you,
my primary love language, it says, what?
You said for you. For you. Not for you. Not for me, for you.
What?
This is why I confuse you.
This is when you cut me off and make me lose my train of thought because you're like chasing a bone somewhere in space. Okay.
Continue, please.
My words of affirmation. I mean, never mind. We're cutting all this out. Make sure you cut it out. So my primary love language is physical touch, which really wasn't a surprise to me. It came in at 33%. Words of affirmation came in second at 23%. Acts of service came in at 17%. Quality time at 13%. And receiving gifts at 13%.
See, so that's a pretty good mix. I mean, it shows
Yeah.
you definitely have a mixture of them. So tell us a little bit about, or tell the audience a little bit about, like, physical touch, because, you know, and it differs a little bit, right? I would tend to think that men think of physical touch. Probably
Why are you smirking,
I'm not.
Mr.
I'm just
Sargent?
saying, like,
Are you
in
blushing
a
over there?
different way.
No, it's not all about sex. It's
It really is all about sex.
hugging,
It's
and
mostly
being
about sex.
present, hand holding.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Foot rubs. Did I
Has
say
she,
foot
has
rubs
she mentioned?
yet?
Has she
Did I
mentioned?
mention that?
Yeah.
So, do you want me to read what it says at the bottom? This short little
Yeah. I mean, I think
paragraph
it's.
that-
I
that-
think it's a good synopsis
that's-
of what it means.
It's supposed
yeah.
to be the synopsis of physical touch.
You
So
made sure you were clear that I understood this. So go ahead.
the language isn't all about the bedroom. A person whose primary language is physical touch is, not surprisingly, very touchy. Hugs, pats on the back, holding hands, and thoughtful touches on the arm, shoulder, or face. They can all be ways to show excitement, concern, care, and love. Physical presence and accessibility are crucial, while neglect or abuse can be unforgivable and destructive. Physical touch fosters a sense of security and belonging in any relationship.
So my question to you is, if you think back in the last, say, during your adulthood, has this been pretty consistent with you? Do you think it's always been the primary one
probably,
of these? Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I do think they fluctuate
Mhm.
through the years. You may need a little more of something than the other. But I think primarily, yeah, mine probably has always been a physical touch. So let's hear your results. What are your results? And then we'll talk about them in combination. Because we are different. We get along
We are
so well, but
different.
we do have different love languages.
So I'll just read mine for you
Oh,
here.
okay. You feel like you're back in school.
I do. So so at the time that I took this, and it's been a little while since we've
Yeah.
taken these tests, mine came out top of words of affirmation at 27%, quality time at 23%, acts of service at 23%, physical touch at 17%, and then receiving gifts at 10%. So I would say that while for a large portion of my life, certainly probably as far back as I can remember, a child, and then through my teenage years, and then early in my adulthood, words of affirmation were huge. Just the way I wired, and I think because in my early growing years, I'll say early, but my teen years going on, when there was a lot of, like I said, dysfunction in my house, it was kind of absent. So when there's an absence of something you really need, it almost seems to magnify the need. And interestingly, I think if I was being honest, when it doesn't come naturally, or when it's not there, given naturally, I do tend to think that the human psyche almost tries to create it, and that can create some negative or bad habits, right?
Yeah. And I think before we took these, didn't we ask each other what we thought each other would be? And we got them right.
Do you think I was right on mine?
Yeah.
On the top one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. And that's what I guessed when you first took this, which I think, like you said, though, or we were saying earlier, it is kind of fluid, and they will bleed in. There will be times when you need a little more, give me a little extra gift to make me feel special.
So let me read the
oh yeah, read the synopsis.
the synopsis of, again, based on my mix and the words of affirmation being the primary. It said, actions don't always speak louder than words. If this is your love language, unsolicited compliments mean the world to you. Hearing the words, I love you, are important. Hearing the reason behind that love sends your spirit skyward. Insults can leave you shattered and are not easily forgotten. Kind, encouraging, and positive words are truly life-giving. And I think that's a good description of words of affirmation. And again, these are general,
Right.
and they don't always completely capture each individual. So I would say for me, words of affirmation, when I would be encouraged for a job well done, or,
You're a communicator. You're a verbal communicator.
right.
Yeah.
And so that it was kind of life-giving, energy-giving, and it would increase my performance in whatever I was doing or how I showed up, relationship or whatever job. But I wasn't the person that was shattered. Like I wasn't of the makeup where if somebody gave me negative feedback, I was shattering. And like this says, it took me a long time through discipline to take constructive criticism. And also took
Who
me.
would criticize you?
I know, right?
You're perfect in my eyes.
Yeah, thanks.
true.
You're so sweet.
It is true.
So not always getting a pat on the back for a job well done or just doing your job doesn't necessarily always. There's this. Honestly, I think my time in the military, probably that discipline of like, hey, you got a job to do. You show up, you do it. That's your expectation. You may get recognized for it, you may not. And I think that builds a resiliency in the sense of like stick-to-itness, and you just show up and you have this responsibility to do that. However, that extra praise or gratitude or acknowledgement, actually, everybody likes that.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be recognized.
And you give that a lot in our relationship, and it's very noticeable to me. Like you always say thank you. You always say please. And like for little things that to me, like I wouldn't think to say thank you. Like just part of daily chores. I might like load the dishwasher and you're like, oh, thank you for doing that. And I'm like, huh? You're very affirming with your words a lot. I don't know if you realize that. I'll clean the house and you'll be like, oh, the house looks great. Thank you so much for that. Like you acknowledge verbally and you tell me you love me every day. You're just very encouraging.
Right. So that just emphasizes the whole point of we often try to give the way we want to receive. And so if my primary is I like to be encouraged in words of affirmation and be recognized, then I'm probably going to by default do that, which is great. I know it means a lot to you. However, where it becomes important to understand this is if words of affirmation, if you were a person where encouragement were like, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. A lot of people are like encouraged inwardly. A lot of people are just, they get that all from inside. I used to work out with this guy years ago and in the gym, and a lot of times in the gym, guys are like, especially if you're spotting somebody, they're like, come on, man, you can do it, you can do it, you can do this. And I used to do this with this guy, and after a while,
I would be like, shut
right.
up.
Well, after a while, this guy just put the rack up. He's like, look, man, I appreciate it. He goes, but all that does is just, it has a negative effect. He goes, I get that internally. I'm like, oh, hey, good to know. That was just one small example. But if you have somebody in your life that it could cause an adverse effect, you need to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's why it's so important and to communicate about this and kind of learn this about yourself, because you're more empathetic for your partner and how they give and receive love, and you have all this love inside you, but if you're not conveying it in a way that they understand or receive, you can kind of be missing the mark.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm actually surprised at looking at this because it's been a while since we looked at this.
Well, we should redo it and then maybe come back at some point and see if we're the same. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised that physical touch is only 17%. I would have thought it would have been 77% or 97%.
You're very touchy, and you always hold my hand in the car. And you always have from day one. When I hold my hand, hugs, we dance in the kitchen. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised that it's not a little bit higher. On yours. I don't know. It's wrong. It's wrong. I'm telling you. No. We should take this. And I was going to say that I'm quite certain that even over the last 7 years of my life, my percentages, if you will, what is important to me and how love languages are conveyed to me have changed. That mix has changed. So words of affirmation are still important, but they're not nearly as important at this stage in my life to me as they were. Still important. And I think quality time kind of starts, the older you get, the more quality time kind of starts going up the ranks a little bit.
That's another thing. So I would say if I was able to test my old self or my younger 20 self, I think quality time would have fallen probably close to the bottom. But to your point, the older you get, your kids grow, you realize that you become more in tune with your mortality.
Yeah, how fast time really does fly.
That's right. It does. That commodity becomes very precious. And I'm not telling people anything they don't know, but it does. So it starts ramping up. So if it becomes more important to me, then I should test it out and see if it's important. So like dedicating that time, putting the phone away, being present, being with you, having conversation, listening, taking it in, responding. That's quality time, right? Quality time isn't always, hey, let's take a vacation.
Right.
That's good, but quality time can be something that you can implement every single day, and it can be in little, like my daughter says, because she's in marketing, little snackable bites, right? Little 5 minutes here, 2 minutes here.
Oh, yeah, because all that builds for sure.
Right, it builds that foundation.
Yeah, so important.
Yeah.
I think this is a really important tool to kind of learn each other's love languages and learn to give and receive in different ways.
So, so flip it a little bit. Knowing, let's just say again, mine's words affirmation. By default, how do you think you, without thinking about, how do you think you typically show up to try to show me?
I think I've had to work a little bit on words of affirmation. I mean, I say I love you, but there are a lot of things that you do that I really appreciate.
Why do you love me?
Oh, let me count the
No,
ways.
I'm just teasing. But I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying is that right. We say I love you, but like why? Or
just the little things like that. The little lovely acts of service you do for me. I've got to be conscientious and think. Let me verbalize how appreciative I am of that. Just so that you know that I appreciate it and like that I want you to continue and love me in those ways. I need to communicate that with you. It just builds a deeper connection and love, strengthen our love.
I think you do a fantastic job. I was sitting there thinking, so I'm going to share with everyone a little bit. Like, so this lady here loves to give gifts, and it's not because she has some shopping fetish.
I mean, it is pretty fun.
Shopping fetish, but you like to give gifts, and so that's on here as this receiving gifts. And I know you like to give gifts, so I noticed that you show your appreciation and love for people by giving gifts. However, and so that actually is on my bottom. So that'd be the bottom one for me, right? Gifts. And so you think,
I mean, I would give gifts all the time if I had the money,
no,
but
I know. Where it's different is, and this is where this isn't hard and fast, the complexities. What's different is that you give gifts, but you put a thought and intent behind the gift that you give. So I'll say that.
And I think that's what you're trying to say. It's not like I'm constantly giving people gifts, but I try to really think about what would be special to them.
Yeah, my point is, over the course of my life, I've gotten a lot of gifts. The kids from Christmas, oh, another tie, oh, socks, great, or even my parents, but even in other relationships. But every gift you've given me, I say of something material, has been spot on. So it's like you listen, what I like, the functionality. I'm a gadget guy, this and that. I'm very functional. I don't. Things that don't necessarily have a function aren't really important to me, and you know that. So when you give me a gift, it's always like, wow, this is like, man, this is awesome, because it's not only the fact that you thought of me to give me something, but there was a lot of intent. So it's almost like there was this piece of affirmation and encouragement in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do I show up to you? Do I get it?
I'm sure you're tired of rubbing my feet every day.
No,
I might be a little spoiled. I love my feet rubbed, and you will literally rub them every day if we're sitting down watching TV or.
Well, I mean, it's if we're hanging out there, it's a I would say it's a minor thing, but it means a lot to you, and it doesn't. Those are the little things.
Yeah.
Assuming you don't have trailer baby feet and you wash them.
Well, I mean, my feet aren't perfect, but at least I'm not a high maintenance girl constantly getting pedicures, spending all your money. As long as you keep rubbing my rough ass feet,
right.
We're good. But now I lost my train of thought.
No, just about how I showed up and how I was. It was like meeting you with the love languages.
And I love when you reach and you want to hold my hand in the car everywhere we go. I mean, it's the little things that can express these different love languages. And I always talk about you bettering my I always say McMuffin, my English muffin. Oh my! Why are you making these?
Those aren't code words, people.
We're not talking about physical touch
Back
right
to physical
now.
touch.
We're talking
My
about
McMuffin.
actually an act of service. No, just how
Oh,
like
God.
when you were buttering it, I thought you were making your own and you handed it to me. You were buttering my. Why do you take everything to the
I'm not
dirty
you're
sergeant?
Right. It was a blueberry
No, it was
muffin.
a sweet act of service. So I'm just saying all these different types of love languages are really important in a relationship.
Absolutely. And so I think a takeaway from this, and we tell this to people we know, whether it doesn't matter whether young marrieds or friends or whatever, is to implement these little conversations every day. This isn't kind of a one and done. Because I know for a fact, when I first read the book and I started to implement this, it made sense, but it didn't become a practice. It didn't become a discipline. It took time to be intentional and to start showing up this way when I was interacting with, my kids or friends or whatever. And it's like, oh, let me put this front of mind and be intentional about how I'm showing up, and then see what feedback it is. And then that becomes a discipline. So the takeaway is, have these conversations, sit down, make it a game, have fun. Once a week, sit down for, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. Shut off the phone, get a glass of wine, whatever you want to drink, and just have these conversations. Go online, do these free surveys. They're a lot of fun. It can be a lot of good banter.
It sparks a lot of good conversation, and to dig deeper into, an emotional intimacy with your partner.
It does, yeah. And there's a gazillion, and some people may not enjoy this, and I get it, but there's a gazillion little surveys, tests like this, whether personality profiles or love languages or other personal development that you can do together. And it not only does it spur communication, effective communication, like we talked about, healthy communication, but it also brings up the toxic parts that you can be aware of them, and then you can work through those together, like you had mentioned before.
It's a small investment to enhance your relationship, really. Just opening the doors of communication with all these kinds of things.
Right. And then the rewards that you reap by being intentional about this, by understanding, hey, my person loves to get gifts and doesn't really care about acts of service or something. So do it. Just even if it's not natural to you, just try intentionally, whatever. And it's crazy. It's like a
well, it may be something super easy, but you just don't realize how important, or that it actually shows your partner you love them. So once you're made aware of that and you can do it, it just enhances your relationship.
It does, yeah. It's like eating that elephant one bite at a time. Start simple, try a little bit, and then see how it just becomes a routine and a habit. So, this is a great conversation. I think I'm really going to focus on physically touching you now more, because it's such an important...
Hold on, let me get my foot up here.
Well, I'll start with your foot.
You're so bad.
Awesome. All right. Enjoyed it.
All right. I love you.
I love you too.